Let's begin this video in the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. Today in this video, I will tell you about what if Earth stops spinning. Hello, my name is Ali Sheikh and I welcome you back to my channel. If you enjoy watching my videos, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more informative and interesting videos. Do not forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Kindly watch the video till end to make it more useful for my audience. So let's begin the countdown. The Earth rotates on its axis due to its inertial rotation during its formation. Inertially, the Earth was a hot and molten mass, but as it gradually cooled down, the conservation of angular momentum caused it to start spinning. As Earth orbits the Sun, it spins on its axis. But what if our planet's rotation stopped suddenly? Would we even be aware of it? To answer this question, let's first consider how fast the Earth is rotating. To complete one rotation in just under 24 hours at the equator, where the circumference of Earth is about 4 million meters, the surface must be moving at over 400 meters per second. If the Earth stops spinning gradually, the effect would also be gradual. We would notice the days and nights were getting longer. Our circadian rhythm would be disturbed and our weather patterns, which are influenced by Earth's rotation, would start to change. Technology department on satellites in orbit would start to experience problems. The consequence would be severe and catastrophic. The Earth rotates at a speed of approximately 1670 kilometers per hour at the equator. This rotation has significant effect on our planet, and everything on Earth's surface, including the atmosphere, oceans, and objects, move with the planet due to its rotation. Everything would continue moving at the same speed, generating intense force and leading to devastating consequences. The sudden stops of Earth's rotation would result in massive earthquakes, tsunamis, and other seismic events. Due to change in speed, severely damaged buildings and structures would be severely damaged or destroyed, and an immense release of tidal force would occur. Ocean and other bodies of Earth would be set into motion, leading to colossal tidal waves spinning across the continents. In addition, the Earth is also in motion along with the Earth rotation. The atmosphere would continue to move at the Earth's previous rotation speed, resulting in powerful winds potentially reaching hurricane or tornado-like velocities. The sudden stop of the Earth's rotation would cause the ocean to slow towards the equator, leading to enormous tidal waves that would flood coastal regions and cause widespread destruction. The stop of the Earth's rotation would induce significant stress of the tectonic plates, potentially triggering volcanic eruptions. The side of the Earth facing the Sun would experience perpetual daylight, while the side in shadow would be in constant darkness. This would have significant implications for temperature and climate. The change in Earth rotation would also affect its gravitational field, leading to change in gravitational pull at different locations on the planet. The resulting natural disasters, extreme weather conditions, and other catastrophic events would likely have a devastating impact on human civilization. Infrastructure would be destroyed and there would be a havoc of widespread loss of life. So while it's fun to think about what would happen if the Earth stops rotating, let's be grateful to Allah that it continues to spin, providing us with a stable climate, day and night cycles, and so much more. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you found it informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more informative and interesting videos. Feel free to leave a comment as well. I look forward to see you in the next video. Till then, keep smiling and goodbye.